Imagine waking up in the morning, and the first sound you hear is not an alarm or traffic, but the wind moving through the trees and birds singing outside your window. Imagine stepping outside, and instead of concrete buildings and busy roads, you are surrounded by forests, mountains, or open fields. The air feels different. It's cleaner, fresher, and somehow more alive. What if your life didn't happen inside four walls and crowded cities? What if most of your days were spent in direct contact with nature? Many people have this dream at some point in their lives. They imagine escaping the noise, the stress, and the constant rush of modern life. They picture themselves living somewhere quiet, surrounded by trees, water, and open sky. But most of them quickly dismiss the idea. They tell themselves it's unrealistic, too difficult, or only possible for people who have a lot of money. But what if living closer to nature wasn't as impossible as it seems? What if it didn't require you to completely abandon modern life, but instead offered a different way of living within it? What would your days actually look like? How would your mind and body change? How would your relationship with time, work, and yourself transform? These are important questions because the way we live today is very far from how humans lived for most of history. We have become disconnected from the natural world in ways that affect us more deeply than we often realize. Let's explore what your life could actually look like if you lived in nature. Most people today live in cities or towns where nature feels distant and separate. We wake up in buildings, travel to work in buildings or vehicles, and return to buildings at the end of the day. Our contact with the natural world is often limited to short walks in parks or occasional trips outside the city. This separation has become so normal that we rarely question it, but it is a relatively new way of living. For most of human history, people lived much closer to nature. They saw the sunrise and sunset. They felt the changing seasons in their bodies. They were more aware of weather, plants, animals, and the rhythms of the earth. Today, many of us can go days or even weeks without spending meaningful time outside. We live under artificial lights, follow artificial schedules, and spend most of our time looking at screens. This way of living affects us in ways we don't always notice. We become more anxious. We sleep worse. We feel more tired even when we haven't done much physical work. We lose touch with our senses. The smell of rain, the feeling of wind on our skin, the sound of birds. These things become rare experiences instead of daily ones. Living in nature is not just about having a nice view. It is about returning to a way of being that our bodies and minds are naturally adapted to. When we remove ourselves from nature for too long, something inside us starts to feel off, even if we can't always explain why. Imagine waking up with the light instead of an alarm. As the sun rises, the room gradually becomes brighter. You open your eyes naturally without the shock of a sudden sound. You might lie there for a while, listening to the sounds outside. When you step outside, the air is cool and fresh. You might make a simple breakfast and eat it while watching the light change across the landscape. There is no rush to check messages or prepare for meetings. The morning feels open and unhurried. This kind of start to the day affects everything that comes after. When you begin without stress and pressure, your mind stays calmer for longer. You carry less tension into the rest of your day. As the sun begins to set, the pace of the day would naturally slow down. You might prepare a simple meal, sit outside, or spend time near a fire. The evening would feel different from city evenings. There would be less artificial light and noise. The darkness would come gradually, and with it a deeper kind of quiet. Many people who live closer to nature report that their evenings feel more restful. Without the constant stimulation of screens and city sounds, the mind has space to settle. Sleep often comes more easily and feels more restorative. One of the most noticeable changes when living in nature is the effect on mental health. Many people experience a significant reduction in anxiety and mental fatigue. The constant background stress that comes from city life tends to decrease when surrounded by natural environments. There are several reasons for this. Nature provides fewer sudden stimuli. There are fewer notifications, fewer urgent demands, and fewer artificial pressures. The mind has more opportunity to rest and wander. Being in nature also encourages presence. When you are surrounded by changing light, weather, and seasons, it becomes easier to stay in the moment. You notice small details that you would normally overlook. This kind of attention can be deeply calming. Another important effect is the change in how you relate to yourself. In cities, it is easy to tie your worth to productivity, status, or income. In nature, these measures lose some of their power. You are no longer surrounded by constant comparisons. Your value is not measured by how much you produce or how busy you appear. This shift can be both freeing and challenging. Some people struggle at first with the absence of external validation. But over time, many discover a quieter and more stable sense of self that doesn't depend so heavily on outside approval. Of course, living in nature is not without difficulties. Physical work can be demanding. Access to certain services and conveniences becomes more limited. Winters can be harsh, and isolation can sometimes feel heavy. It also requires a different set of skills. You need to be more self-reliant and adaptable. Things that are easy in the city can become complicated in more remote areas. However, many people find that these challenges are different in nature than the challenges of modern life. They often feel more direct and meaningful. Instead of fighting against artificial systems and constant pressure, you work with natural conditions. This can create a different relationship with difficulty, one that feels more honest and less draining over time. When you live closer to nature, you gain something that is increasingly rare in the modern world: real presence and peace of mind. You stop living in a constant state of future anxiety. You stop measuring your worth primarily by your income or productivity. You start making decisions based on what makes you feel alive and grounded, rather than what brings more money or status. This doesn't mean money becomes irrelevant. It means money stops being the central focus of your life. It becomes a tool that supports your life rather than the main purpose of it. Living in nature also offers a different perspective on time. Days feel longer and more spacious. You become more aware of natural rhythms, the changing seasons, the movement of the sun, the cycles of growth and rest. This awareness can make life feel richer and more meaningful, even when material comforts are fewer. The modern world will always encourage you to live faster, produce more, and stay connected to systems that often leave little room for nature. But the possibility of living differently still exists. Your life doesn't have to be completely separated from the natural world. It can include more trees, more silence, more physical movement, and more connection with the land. Living in nature will not solve every problem. It will not make you permanently happy or remove all difficulties. But it can offer a different foundation, one where peace, presence, and a deeper connection with life become more accessible. If this vision spoke to you, even slightly, then maybe it is worth considering what kind of relationship you want to have with the natural world. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe. And if you are already imagining what your life could look like if you lived closer to nature, you are already beginning to ask better questions.